black bride rejected for her skin, until a millionaire farmer claimed her heart. This marriage, it can never happen. The words fell from his lips like poison, and in that moment, Amara Wilson's world shattered. At the center of Riverbrook's small station, a man holding a bouquet, the man she had trusted with her future, looked at her with disgust. Strangers paused, whispering, some smirking at the scene unfolding before their eyes. And then came the words that cut deeper than any knife. "You should have told me that you're black." This is the story of Amara Wilson, a woman who carried not only hope in her heart but also a secret powerful enough to shake an entire town. Amara had been a schoolteacher in Boston. Her life was filled with books, chalk-dusted classrooms, and quiet evenings alone. She wasn't chasing riches or grandeur, only love, respect, and a place to belong. Then came Harold Pierce, a widowed merchant from Riverbrook. Harold had written to her with letters that dripped with longing and vulnerability. He described his loneliness, his yearning for companionship, his dreams of a simple but meaningful life. And for 6 long months those letters became the rhythm of Amara's heart. "Race doesn't matter to me," Harold had once written. "All I need is someone who understands me." So when his final letter came, asking her to leave behind Boston and begin anew with him, Amara spent her last savings, packed a trunk, and set out on a journey of 3 weeks, chasing hope. The day she arrived, Amara dressed with care. A freshly pressed dress, a delicate hat, hope shining in her eyes. But the moment Harold saw her, everything changed. His face drained of color, the bouquet sagging in his sweaty grip. "This won't work," he stammered. Amara forced a smile. "What do you mean? We've written for months." "You said." He stepped back. "You should have told me you're black." The words echoed in the busy station. Curious eyes turned toward them. A cruel spectacle had begun. I thought you understood me," Amara whispered, her throat tightening. "I poured my heart into every letter. Didn't you ever wonder who I really was?" But Harold's fear wasn't of her heart. It was of the town, the whispers, the business he might lose. "I can't risk my reputation," he muttered. Then, fumbling, he shoved a few crumpled bills into her hand. "This will cover your stay for a few nights. Take the train back tomorrow. It's for the best." Her heart cracked, but her voice did not falter. "So, love was never about the soul for you, Harold. It was only ever about appearances." And just when Harold turned his back, tossing money like she was nothing, a voice thundered across the platform. "Is that how you solve everything, Pierce? Throw money at the problem and hope it disappears?" The crowd shifted. A tall man emerged, his presence commanding, his attire simple yet undeniably fine. Sun-darkened skin spoke of years spent outdoors, but the confidence in his posture told another story. This was no ordinary man. "Alexander Maxwell," he introduced himself. The whispers began immediately. Riverbrook's wealthiest landowner. A man whose influence stretched across every farm, every household. He looked at Amara, not with pity, not with disgust, but with dignity. "Miss, if you'll allow me, I offer you shelter at my estate. You'll be safe there. No one will harm or disrespect you under my roof." Harold bristled. "Maxwell, this is none of your concern. The community won't stand for." Alexander's smile was cold, sharp. "The same community that depends on my land, on my word. Let them try. I will not stand by while a woman is humiliated simply for the color of her skin." Harold shrank back, his power dissolving in the shadow of Alexander Maxwell. Amara's chest rose and fell. Her dreams had been crushed only moments ago, yet something stirred within her. A new fire. "I won't accept charity," she said firmly, meeting Alexander's steady gaze. "All I ask is the chance to live as a human being, with dignity." Alexander inclined his head. "Then consider it dignity, Miss Wilson. From this moment on, you are not alone." Platform went silent. The whispers grew louder in the distance. Something had shifted in Riverbrook. But what no one, not Harold, not the gawking crowd, not even Alexander Maxwell knew, was that inside the false bottom of Amara's trunk lay documents, old weathered papers. Indeed, a truth buried for decades. A truth powerful enough to topple Riverbrook's most respected families. And soon the town would learn that rejecting Amara Wilson was the greatest mistake they had ever made. The carriage wheels rumbled across gravel as Amara sat stiffly inside, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes stung not from tears, she had refused to shed them, but from the weight of everything she had just endured. Across from her sat Alexander Maxwell, calm and collected, watching her with a measured gaze. His presence filled the carriage, not with arrogance, but with something steadier, like the ground itself. "Forgive the intrusion earlier," Alexander said at last. His voice carried a steady warmth. "But some things cannot be left unanswered. Pierce, he is a coward. And cowards have no right to wound others." Amara kept her chin lifted. "I'm not a fragile woman, Mr. Maxwell. I did not ask to be rescued." A smile tugged at his lips. "Then perhaps I didn't rescue you. Perhaps I simply ensured justice wasn't strangled in plain daylight." She almost smiled, but stopped herself. Outside, the estate gates opened, revealing vast fields of golden wheat swaying in the breeze. The mansion itself stood like a fortress of old stone, sturdy and proud, with ivy creeping along its walls. Servants in neat uniforms rushed forward, bowing as the carriage halted. For the first time in days, Amara felt something strange stirring inside her chest. Safety. But safety was fragile in Riverbrook. By nightfall, the town was already alive with whispers. "Did you hear? A colored woman at Maxwell's estate. They say she was abandoned at the station. Imagine the scandal. Maxwell inviting her into his home." The gossip spread like wildfire, fueled by envy and curiosity. Some warned that Alexander was tarnishing his name. Others, secretly, admired his defiance. Harold Pierce, humiliated and furious, drank himself into a bitter stupor that night. "She'll bring ruin to us all," he hissed to anyone who would listen. But few dared to agree openly. After all, Alexander Maxwell's influence was heavier than Harold's bitterness. Inside the mansion, Alexander showed Amara to a guest chamber. The room was spacious, with tall windows spilling moonlight across velvet curtains. A warm fire burned in the hearth, crackling softly. On the bedside table sat a vase of fresh roses, their fragrance sweet and delicate. "This will be your room for as long as you wish," Alexander said. "No expectations, no obligations, only rest." Amara's eyes softened. "Most men would have left me in the street." "Then most men are not worth your sorrow," he replied, his gaze steady, unwavering. For a moment, silence hung between them, thick with an unspoken energy neither dared to name. Over the next days, Amara discovered a side of Alexander few in town truly knew. Yes, he was wealthy. His land stretched farther than the eye could see, but he worked among his men, dirt under his nails, sun on his back. He spoke to his workers by name, ate with them at times, and never wore the sneer that most rich men carried like armor. Amara watched quietly as he moved through his world, commanding not by fear, but by respect. And Alexander, in turn, noticed her strength, the way she held her chin high, even when whispers reached her ears. The way she carried herself with quiet dignity, as though she belonged not just in his estate, but anywhere she chose. But when night fell, and the mansion grew silent, Amara would open her trunk in secret. Beneath her dresses, hidden in a false wooden bottom, lay the papers. She would run her fingers over them, the ink faded but still sharp enough to cut through generations of lies. Indeed, land once owned by her grandfather. Land stolen through deception, swallowed by the same families who now whispered about her in Riverbrook's taverns and parlors. Her rejection at the station was more than humiliation. It was a reminder of how the world had always sought to erase her. But Amara Wilson carried proof. Proof of her family's rightful place. And though she had not yet spoken of it to Alexander Maxwell, she knew one thing with certainty. Her presence in Riverbrook was not a mistake. It was destiny. Riverbrook was small enough that every whisper eventually became a storm. At the church steps, ladies in crisp bonnets gathered after Sunday service. "A colored woman living at Maxwell's estate," one muttered. "It's indecent. Mark my words, this will ruin his reputation." At the saloon, men leaned across counters. "She'll be gone in a week. Maxwell's not fool enough to risk his standing." But behind their words lay envy, because Maxwell had dared to do what none of them would: defy the unspoken laws of Riverbrook. Harold Pierce, still smarting from humiliation at the station, sat in his parlor with a half-empty glass of whiskey. "She embarrassed me," he spat. "That woman humiliated me before half the town." His mother, stern and sharp-tongued, pressed her lips thin. "You should have chosen better, Harold. A Pierce does not stoop to such unions." Harold's fists clenched. "She won't last. I'll see to it. Maxwell can't protect her forever." And in that dimly lit parlor, Harold Pierce began to weave a plan, one that would strike Amara not with fists, but with whispers sharpened into knives. It happened at the general store. Amara walked in, her head high, basket in hand. The air shifted instantly. Conversations hushed, eyes darted. Behind the counter, Mrs. Granger, the storekeeper's wife, offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We don't stock for your kind," she said flatly. The words struck like stones, but Amara did not flinch. Her voice, calm and clear, filled the room. "Your shelves carry flour, salt, and sugar. My coin is as real as theirs." Murmurs rippled among the customers. Some smirked. Some looked away in shame. But none defended her. Just as the silence grew unbearable, heavy boots echoed on the floorboards. Alexander Maxwell stepped inside. He didn't raise his voice, didn't curse or threaten. He simply walked to the counter, laid down gold coins and said, "Fill her basket, twice over, and put it on my account." The room froze. No one dared to move except Mrs. Granger, whose hands trembled as she obeyed. Amara met Alexander's eyes. For the first time, her mask of strength cracked, just slightly, and gratitude shone through. That evening, in the quiet glow of lanterns at Maxwell's estate, Amara sat with her basket of goods untouched. "Why do you do it?" she asked him softly. "Why place yourself between me and their scorn?" Alexander leaned against the mantel, arms crossed. "Because silence makes tyrants bold. And because—" His voice faltered only slightly. "I see you." The fire crackled, and in its glow, words unsaid carried heavier weight than words spoken. Later that night, when she opened her trunk, the documents seemed to whisper louder than ever. This town wanted her gone. But in her hands, she held proof that she belonged more than anyone dared admit. The question was no longer if she would claim her family's legacy. When? By midweek, Harold Pierce's bitterness had transformed into poison. At the tavern, he leaned across tables, voice dripping with malice. "She's only after his fortune. Schemer, that one. Mark my words, she'll bleed Maxwell dry." At the church steps, whispers carried his words further. "Have you heard? They say she came with forged papers. A fraud. Imagine the scandal if it's true." Every rumor spread like wildfire, twisting Amara's dignity into spectacle. Riverbrook's people were eager to believe the worst, because it fed the hunger for gossip that bound the town together. And then came the invitation. A stiff card, embossed with silver, delivered to Maxwell's estate. Mrs. Alden, the wealthiest widow in Riverbrook, was hosting a gathering. Music, wine, and dancing. Alexander glanced at the card with suspicion. "Why would she invite you after the way they've treated you?" Amara studied the neat lettering, her jaw firm. "Because they don't want me as a guest. They want me as entertainment. To see if I'll break." Alexander frowned. "Then decline." But Amara shook her head slowly. "No. If I run, they win. If I stand, They'll learn I am not so easily erased. The night of the gathering arrived. Amara entered the Olden mansion with measured grace. She wore a gown of soft blue silk, one of her few precious belongings, and carried herself like a queen, though every eye pierced her like a blade. Whispers trailed her steps. Look at her. How bold, walking in here as though she belongs. At the refreshment table, Mrs. Alden herself greeted her with a saccharine smile. My, what a lovely dress. I've always admired how resourceful some women can be. It was an insult, dressed in velvet. The room chuckled softly. Amara met her eyes without flinching. Resourceful women build legacies, Mrs. Alden. History rarely remembers those who sit and sneer. The chuckle died. Silence rippled, heavy and sharp. Across the room, Alexander watched. He didn't rush to her side, didn't shield her with words. He simply stood tall, his presence radiating authority. It was a silent declaration. She is not alone. For the first time, Riverbrook's elite hesitated. Their laughter thinned. Their confidence faltered. Because Alexander Maxwell had chosen his side, and it was hers. But Harold Pierce, lurking in the shadows of the gathering, saw it all. His jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. Every smile Amara gave, every dignified step she took, felt like a knife twisting into his pride. And in that boiling envy, Harold whispered to a companion, "She won't last. I'll make sure of it. If gossip won't ruin her, truth will." His eyes gleamed with malice. Because Harold knew, truth could be twisted sharper than any lie. This section adds public confrontation, subtle humiliation, and Amara's boldness in facing it head-on. The bond with Alexander grows stronger through his silent protection, while Harold's hatred deepens into something dangerous. Harold Pierce was not a man who forgave humiliation. And now, fueled by whispers of Amara's hidden legacy, he devised his boldest scheme yet. He spread word across Riverbrook. A community meeting in the town hall. An urgent matter concerning outsiders and property. By the following evening, the hall swelled with merchants, farmers, wives, and laborers. The air buzzed with expectation. At the front stood Harold, chest puffed, papers clutched in his sweating hands. He had prepared his performance well. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harold began, his voice sharp as a blade. "We gather tonight not for gossip, but for truth. Truth about a stranger who has made herself far too comfortable in our town." All eyes shifted as Amara entered the hall beside Alexander Maxwell. Her posture was regal, but her heart thundered. Harold's gaze burned into her. "This woman," he sneered, "arrived here under false pretenses. She hides behind courtesy, but in reality she carries claims. Dangerous claims to lands that do not belong to her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara's throat tightened. She had told no one. How much did he truly know? Harold slammed his hand on the table. "She intends to stir division, to pit neighbor against neighbor, to destroy the very families who built Riverbrook." Murmurs erupted. Some eyes glared at Amara with suspicion, others with pity. Harold leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom. "So tell us, Miss Wilson, what are you hiding in that trunk of yours?" Amara froze. For a heartbeat, silence crushed the hall. Then Alexander Maxwell rose slowly, his presence commanding the room into sudden quiet. "Enough, Pierce." His voice was calm but edged with steel. "You speak of destruction, yet all I see is a coward, terrified of a woman's strength." The hall stirred. Harold flushed with rage. "This is none of your concern, Maxwell. She's deceiving us all." Alexander's gaze swept the crowd before settling firmly on Harold. "If you wish to speak of deception, perhaps you should tell these people how your fortune truly began. Or shall I remind them of the debt you inherited, and the debts you never paid?" The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispered doubts spread like wildfire. Harold stammered, That is slander." Alexander's eyes darkened. "No, Harold. That is truth. And unlike you, I have nothing to hide. He turned to Amara, his voice carrying across the hall. This woman does not stand here alone. She stands with me. Gasps filled the room. Alexander Maxwell, the most powerful landowner in Riverbrook, had just claimed her before them all. Amara's chest tightened. Relief. Fear. Harold's face turned crimson. This isn't over, he hissed, trembling with fury. But in that moment, Amara realized something powerful. Harold might have the town's whispers, but she had Alexander's voice. And in Riverbrook, that voice could silence them all. This part delivers public confrontation, Harold's attempt to ruin Amara, and Alexander's shocking declaration of support. It leaves the audience in suspense. Harold isn't done yet, but the tide is starting to turn. The night after the meeting, Harold Pierce paced his study like a caged beast. His face still burned with humiliation. The whispers of the townsfolk still rang in his ears. Maxwell silenced him. Did you see the way he stood with her? Each word cut deeper than a knife. Harold poured himself a drink, hands trembling. I will not be shamed by her, he growled. She thinks Maxwell's protection makes her untouchable. She's wrong. In the flickering lamplight, Harold began to plan. Not another public spectacle. No, this time he would strike quietly, precisely. Meanwhile, within the grand walls of the Maxwell estate, Amara found herself drawn again and again to the library. Row after row of books and records, many untouched for decades. Dust gathered on maps, ledgers, and land deeds. Each night she worked by candlelight, her fingers tracing faded ink, her eyes scanning for fragments of truth. And then she found it. A missing link. A record that cross-referenced Joseph Freeman, the name of her grandfather, with parcels of land now owned by the Pierce family. Her breath caught. The truth was undeniable. Her family had been stripped, cheated, erased. And now, at last, she held the proof. But Amara wasn't alone. From the garden below, Harold watched her through the tall windows, her figure outlined by the soft glow of lamplight. He saw her carefully tuck a stack of papers into her trunk before extinguishing the candle. A cold smile spread across his face. So it's true. She does have something. And soon, it will be mine. The next morning, Alexander found Amara pale and weary. Her eyes rimmed red from sleepless study. You're pushing yourself too hard, he said softly. Whatever truth you seek, it will still be there tomorrow. Amara met his gaze, her voice steady but heavy. Alexander, this isn't just my truth. It's the truth of Riverbrook. A truth buried because men like Harold built their fortunes on stolen soil. Alexander placed a reassuring hand over hers. Then when the time comes, we will face it together. But in the shadows of that promise, Harold Pierce was already moving his pieces across the board. The town of Riverbrook carried on in uneasy silence. Merchants still sold their wares.